Chris, I have a question that I've been wondering about for a
Okay.
while. Whenever we record at your house, and we're recording at mine tonight, so we can't really test this, I feel like when I'm getting ready to leave at the end of the night and I come downstairs, usually I see your son passed out on the couch or the ottoman or something. What is Wade's normal bedtime situation?
That's a good question. And maybe we get flack for this. I don't know. Because, a lot of families, a lot of kids have like really strict, like not strict, but just like very routine bedtime routines, I guess. Like really like the same all the time. And just based off of our schedules, like the way that we live, we're like, we will often not be at home by the time most people start a bedtime routine. We're not like out super late all the time.
Sure.
But we might be out till 9 o'clock. And he's not going to go to bed till after 9 o'clock anyway.
Mhm.
I would say bedtime routine is, it depends if we get home. Like say we get home and we're home at dinner time, we eat dinner. If that's the case, we eat dinner, he eats dinner, he takes a little bubble bath maybe. He
Cute.
dries off, drinks his little milk, we brush his teeth, and then we watch something. He cuddles with somebody and he falls asleep. That usually happens all within the hours of, like, if that's the night, he'll fall asleep like at maybe a little before 10 o'clock. It's kind of hard to get him to fall asleep. A lot of times, that might not happen, and he will be up wanting to watch. He'll say ABCs. He just wants to watch ABC videos or whatever. Watch is what he says.
Right,
and
yeah.
he'll watch whatever on TV, and he won't want to go to sleep when he's watching something he cares about, and so he'll be fidgeting and like he'll almost fall asleep, and he'll be flailing and moving and climbing and playing, and he'll watch something and he won't fall asleep till like 11 or after sometimes. So it really just depends on to answer your question, there's not a specific routine.
Gotcha.
It's just,
and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not you're going to say you're a bad parent or whatever. I always find it funny, the idea of like, since I do not have children, people joke about how like people without children will be on an airplane and say like, control your child. I'm not that person,
Right.
but I do think it's funny, the idea that someone would have the nerve
Right.
to say that.
Right.
But I was just curious, just because like, we're upstairs, we're kind of near the bedroom. I didn't know if we were
Right.
keeping him from a normal routine whenever we were up there.
I would say that we will generally, you wait 10 minutes after he falls asleep and you carry him into his room.
Okay.
If we're recording upstairs, he probably won't get moved to his room till we leave. But also that's not messing with him because he doesn't really wake up either way usually.
Gotcha.
If he does, then, then he falls asleep with us again. He just doesn't fall asleep on his own at all.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, like, has YouTube replaced bedtime stories for kids?
For Wade, it certainly has.
Yeah, like, when's the last time that you read him, like, a bedtime story out of a book?
I don't know. We read him books quite often, but, like, as a specific bedtime routine, it less than we should probably, because, again, YouTube is, like, the death of everyone and everything, probably. Like, I watch a ton of YouTube.
I mean, I fall asleep to it, so I'm not knocking that as a strategy.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I think that I would say, I mean, again, TV in general has replaced bedtime stories for the most part, I think. And again, we limit his screen time for sure,
Mhm.
but there's stuff where it's like, it's either read him a book and he screams and runs around, or he'll lay down on you and watch YouTube videos, or Cars. He's really into Cars.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was thinking about like bedtime stories and being an uncle every once in a while, I get the opportunity to read a bedtime story, but I don't have to deal with doing this every single night to where it's annoying. And I remember like the first time I was over at the Davenport's house, and like I ended up reading a bedtime story. I think last time we were there, I read a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like children's book to Kendrick. But yeah, the first time I was there, I remember reading this book to Kellen called The Wonky Donkey. Are you familiar with that book?
Yes, I am.
Yes, it's a fun book. And, I think I enjoy reading it because you just have like the big, long list of adjectives about the donkey that you kind of get to talk about. And in some ways, I feel like it's helping me train for my future rap career, where it's like I'm going to develop my flow by talking about the wonky donkey.
That's right.
And it's funny because there is a challenge on this LA radio station that I remember seeing a while back, and I watched more of them yesterday, where they have rappers come in and freestyle the book Llama Llama Red Pajama.
I've heard of that, actually.
Yeah, like Ludacris does a good one. Killer Mike, like he just like, these guys usually get to use like an instrumental of one of their own songs,
Sure.
so like they have the advantage of being able to like they know the flow, they know where the beat's going. But it's I feel like maybe there is a path from children's story to rap career. But like one of the side effects that I've been thinking about with like reading bedtime stories, not for me but for kids, is that like it teaches them how grammar works in a way. Instead of sitting you down and saying like, do a worksheet and here's how to do grammar, that you're kind of subtly showing them like, well, here's how you talk and here's
Right.
how you would say this sort of thing. And one of the specific grammar things that I feel like children's stories can teach is the order of adjectives, kind of like in the Wonky Donkey.
Sure.
And this is what Josh writes in about. He asks, why do adjectives always go in a certain order? For example, why is it right to say the big bad wolf? And it sounds wrong to say the bad big wolf. And I feel like this is a great question. And Josh is referring to what is called the royal order of adjectives.
Oh.
I do not know which king or queen came up with this idea. I cannot find anything on that. So I guess we'll just say King Charles for now. We'll blame it on him. But anyways, like there's this list of adjective categories that we use in everyday life, regardless if you think about it. And that order is quantity, opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, and qualifier. And then after that, you'd have your noun. And, it's up to interpretation a little bit. There are some people that argue about, like, should we call this category a different thing? Should we, combine these two or whatever? But that's the generally accepted, order of this sort of thing. And when I was thinking about the Wonky Donkey, I wondered if it followed that category.
I'm in my head right now. I'm like, does the Wonky Donkey do that?
Exactly. So
because I know the Wonky Donkey. Like, have you heard the song?
I watched a Scottish woman read it and laugh.
I've seen that, but there's a song with this like really down home country boy guy singing, and he's like, he was a wonky donkey, and it'll be like, the donkey only had 2 legs, 1 eye, and he was really, 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 really fast, and then he'll sing, he was a hanky pinky pet, whatever, you know what I mean?
For sure. No, that's good. Yeah, and yeah. So I looked this up, and I was trying to test it out to see. So by the end of the book, you have a spunky, hanky, panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky, donkey. And spunky, hanky, panky, cranky, and stinky, dinky all appear to fall under opinion, which would be the first one that we have so far because there's no quantity. And then lanky would be next, which is the shape.
Okay.
And I would consider honky tonky to be a statement about origin, saying that this person is from the South because they like country music from the South, and that's what I associate the term honky tonk with. And then you have winky and wonky being the qualifiers of this is the type of donkey, and like with the one eye and the lack of the lack of leg. I think is that the problem? Is it
Yeah. Lack of leg.
Yes, that's one way to say it, I suppose. Yeah, but so then I thought if it doesn't use proportionally, it doesn't use every single category. I thought there's got to be a quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog equivalent for this thing, and I could not find just cowards on the internet. No one had one of these that filled all the spots. So I thought it'd be fun for us to make our own right now, just kind of like Mad Libs improv style.
Okay.
So we'll see how this goes.
I'm a little scared.
Yeah, I know. So let's see here. So just as a reminder, we can go we can take it we'll say kind of like a Mad Lib where we're just going to say we need a quantity. You take a quantity. I'll take this, and then I'll type it out and we can read it here at the end and see how bad it turns out. So first we need to have an article, just a, and, the, your, whatever. So let's just go with the, just to make it simple. Yeah. Okay. So I need a quantity from you.
4.
Okay.
The 4.
The 4, and then I will choose an opinion. So I'm going to say horrendous.
Okay.
All right.
4 horrendous.
And then we need a size.
Gargantuan.
Okay.
The 4 horrendous gargantuan.
Gargantuan. Okay. And then I will do an age, and I'm going to say geriatric.
The 4 horrendous gargantuan geriatric.
Okay. And then a shape for you.
Rectangular.
Ooh, okay. Okay, and so you did a shape, so I need to do a color.
Okay.
A color, and I'm going to do beige, and I need you to beige, and I need you to pick an origin.
Okay, American. Yeah,
okay.
American for sure.
Of course, nothing says American like beige. I don't know why.
Beige American.
Yeah, and then a qualifier. So this is going to be a certain type of noun. So I think we should choose the qualifier in noun I'll do that together as a pair.
Okay.
And I'm going to say preschool children.
Preschool children. Wow.
Yeah, don't ask why they're geriatric. But we have just created we'll say the first ever royal order of adjectives phrase.
The class of dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the 4 horrendous gargantuan geriatric rectangular beige American preschool children
What?
coming to a public school near you.
That's like a pretty good like 4-piece band name.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, come see us at the at the local dive bar, I guess.
Try to put that on the side.
We're not playing in an arena. I'll tell you that much. So linguists have tried to study how strictly this royal order is even followed, because like it's a lot of rules to follow, and chances are like how often is everyone following these exactly? And this is kind of hard to analyze. So I found like one linguist who said that they had like, ran thousands of text samples through some sort of algorithm to like sort this. And they found that 78% of the strings of adjectives where there was more than one adjective followed in this order. And then there was another person I found who looked for every instance that someone used the words big and red together. And there were 382 instances where they found that big, comma, red was the order, and 0 instances
Wow.
of red, comma, big, which I thought, like, there's got to be one weird person out there, right?
Yeah.
But, like, at this point, you might be thinking that the big bad wolf doesn't follow this rule, and that, you if you guessed that at home, congratulations, you're right, that if we're following the royal order of adjective, the bad big wolf is the correct way to
Wow.
say this. So there are exceptions, and this is one that came up a lot that I was reading about, the big bad wolf being one that doesn't follow the order. And it gets to Josh's original question, is why does this exist? Why do we have this? Because everything I can tell that like no one just sat down, like, some king didn't sit down and say, I decree that this is the order and this is what it's going to be. Like language evolves over time.
Mm-hmm.
Other languages have versions of this as well. Like it's a pretty common thing for a language to have an unofficial order of how you list the adjectives. But what people believe to be the reason for this is that it is an order of importance. And the farther away you are from that noun, the less important you are. So when you think about the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf, the part about his size is not as important as his moral compass. It is more important that he is bad for this story to work than it is that he is big. So there are going to be exceptions to the royal order rules, like the big bad wolf. But over time, like we basically formed this order as a way to sort need to know information. So that way you know when to start tuning someone out and when to start paying attention. So based on that order, apparently this means our ancestors did not really care much about your opinion.
So we actually got a question from Lila. Thank you, Lila, for the question. And she says this: in the Anne of Green Gables sequel, Rilla of Ingleside, they introduced the concept of a white feather being given to a man that didn't enlist in the military. What was this about? That's a great question, and I actually had zero idea about this. The feather, it turns out, from all my research that I did do, has meant a lot of things throughout the years to a lot of different people groups. I'll tell you my first instinct when I hear feather, and this I want you to know before we continue is not related in any way to the answer to this question, but what I immediately think of is one of my favorite movies as a kid was The Rescuers Down Under. Have you ever watched that?
I've watched some Rescuers stuff, but I don't know if I've seen that.
It's like I think it's like a late 80s, maybe early 90s sequel to like a cartoon Disney movie.
Yeah.
And it's like where these little mice,
yes,
and I think they're a part of this thing called the Rescue Aid Society. They go to Australia or New Zealand or something. I don't know.
And they get eaten because something big is
no, but they're trying to catch a poacher. Oh. And this poacher is trying to poach all kinds of things, but one of the most important ones being a golden eagle. And he has a feather for this golden eagle. And I never really, thinking back on this, I don't know why he had the feather. I don't know if this was like a trophy of a golden eagle he had poached or what, but I remember like scenes of him like rubbing this feather on his face and like holding it and like looking at it in the light. That's like what I immediately think of with a feather. So I'm pretty sure that has nothing to do with it, right? But that's like where my mind goes, right? But another thing that immediately popped into my head is the song Yankee Doodle, right? Yankee Doodle. It says he puts a feather in his hat and calls it macaroni, right? Which is like kind of odd too, right?
Yes, for sure.
And we're going to get into that later, but I think I want to start with the first thing that it seems like in the original meaning of the feather was peace, okay? And pacifism, like just just like general get alongness, right? And it was in the 1800s, the early 1800s, this happened, and it was a Maori prophet from the New Zealand area, and he promoted this to his people. He promoted peace to his people, and he said, hey, I want you to display on you so that everyone who sees you knows you're about peace. I want you to display a white feather on you. And it was usually like in their hair or maybe on their lapel or like on a necklace or bracelet or something, right?
Interesting.
And so he promoted that, and still actually the people in the same like people group in the area, they still do this to this day. So peace is still very important to him. But for the Maori people, peace was important. It's still important. And I think that is what like the original meaning of the feather, I think the one that you can maybe trace back to the most like maybe most well documented earliest of what it could mean. But I think some of the war stuff stem from that. And so, but it changes. It got kind of twisted in translation. People decided to use it for something for bad instead of good.
Interesting.
Fact, right? And so in 1914, this is when it seems to really be. So Anne of Green Gables was World War I. This is from World War I to 1914. There was a guy, he was an admiral in the British Army, Admiral Charles Fitzgerald. And he was actually vice admiral in the Royal Navy, and he was a very big proponent of people enlisting in the military. He wanted as many people to enlist in the military as possible. They wanted to grow their forces. They wanted it to be as big as ever and as bad as ever and as like bad in a good way as ever.
How many Mounties do you think are in there?
And so he did this, right? And so he didn't know exactly what to do, but he kind of brainstormed. He kind of thought about it. How do I get the most people to enlist that I can possibly get? How can I get more bodies on this thing? How can I get more guys to be interested? And so he deliberated for quite some time, it seems, but he came up with an idea that he thought, this will work. And guess what he did? He gathered together 30 women from his area, right? 30 women from his town, which was Folkestone, and he told them that you need to go out and to any person, any male, any man that you see out in public not wearing a military uniform, you need to hand them a white feather. And this he thought was the most effective way because what it was going to show was like the feather means peace and war is the opposite of peace, right? Mm-hmm. And so what they decided the feather would mean is like cowardice, right? These men are too cowardly. They're not man enough. They're more. So this kind of plays into gender roles, right? And he thinks that women shaming a man for not being in the war might work even more effectively than like someone like him, maybe a high-ranking official saying, "Hey, you need to enlist." Like he thinks if people of their own level, people they see all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Specifically, women in the community, maybe they're women in their family even. He said if they shame them, this can maybe be the most effective way. And these 30 women, the very first 30, they dubbed themselves. Well, I think it was really dubbed by the main guy, right, Charles Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. They were called the White Feather Brigade. It's actually not known how effective this was, but it was effective enough that it spread around and more people started doing it, and it actually started to cause a problem like in the government because people who are in like high-ranking official government jobs started getting handed feathers all the time.
Oh no, the prime minister, he's helping the war effort, but he's not in uniform.
Exactly, because Fitzgerald's only thing was if they're not wearing a uniform, you hand it to them, right? You give them a feather. And so this was happening, and so eventually this kind of started like a domino effect where basically the guy who's basically like the equivalent in Britain of like the Secretary of State came out with this thing, and all the people who worked in the government jobs got like this badge that said "For King and Country," which meant like I am working on the war effort even though I'm not in uniform, like I'm still working towards this effort, right? So they kind of got their pass, right? Because it was causing a problem. It was really causing some like an uproar in the community. But the thing is, this feather thing, whether or not it worked, whether or not it was successful in recruiting people, it definitely did not prove popular among all the soldiers. Because often people would maybe be home on leave, or people would be, there are various reasons a man might not be in uniform, right?
Yeah.
And they would make a mistake. A woman would make a mistake. And again, there are more women being in this all the time in this White Feather Brigade. And so they might give an injured or discharged member of the military a feather, right?
Yeah, the more you go and mention like the worse and worse of an idea.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like it's a good, I mean, I guess it's like a good idea in practice. Like maybe you're right. Like if you're wanting to use shame to motivate someone to do something, this might work.
It kind of feels like a Live Strong bracelet in a way. Like I'm going to wear this bracelet to be like, if this guy, this is before all of the Lance Armstrong like doping and cheating allegations, but it's like, if this guy survived cancer and he could ride a bike so much better than you, then the least you can do is buy a bracelet.
Right,
it
exactly.
Kind of feels like that.
Yeah, it kind of does. It's kind of like, it feels a little bad, right?
Yeah.
And so like I said, sometimes maybe injured or discharged people were starting to get targeted by women who would go up to them. They would call themselves a part of this feather brigade, and they would give them a feather, right? And in one instance, a guy named Reuben Farrow was aggressively approached by this woman on a train asking, why are you not doing your duty for this country? Why are you not in uniform? Why are you not serving? To which he responded, and from what I can only understand, I don't think he was aggressive. He just slowly turned around and held up his hand, which was missing his hand. Because it turns out he had been relieved of his duty in the military. He had done his job. He had gotten injured, and he was now out. And she then was led to apologize because she realized, ooh, this was stupid. I probably shouldn't have done that. But she was told, like, she was a part of this group. I'm sure that like, there was, people go to group gatherings, classes, tell people how to effectively do this. They were trying to do what they were supposed to do, But one of the most documented ones where it was a mistake was a man who was named Private Norman Demuth. And he'd been discharged in 1916, so 2 years after the war, after being wounded. And he was, according to his account, often receiving white feathers when he came back home. Multiple times that it happened. And he was talking about one of the last times, and he's quoted in the book, The Forgotten Voice of the Great War, and he says this: almost the last feather I received was on a bus. I was sitting near the door when I became aware of 2 women on the side talking at me, and I thought to myself, oh Lord, here we go again. One leant forward and produced a feather and said, here's a gift for a brave soldier. I took it and said, thank you very much. I wanted one of those. Then I took my pipe out of my pocket, put this feather down the stem, and worked it in a way I've never worked a pipe cleaner before. When it was filthy, I pulled it out and said, we didn't get these in the trenches. And I handed it back to her. And she instinctively put out her hand and took it. So there she was, sitting with this filthy pipe cleaner in her hand, and all the other people on the bus began to get indignant. Then she dropped it and got up to get out, but we were nowhere near a stopping point, and the bus went quite a long way. And while she got well and truly barracked by the rest of the people on the bus, I sat back and laughed like mad. So it's like this guy made kind of fun out of it. Yeah. I can't imagine, fun at the expense of people, right? It's not something I necessarily recommend, but I can understand his response, right? Because he's just tired of getting it. He was in the war. He got out in a respectable I think they probably call it like an honorable discharge.
Yeah.
And so this feather thing, it quickly moved from this sign of like peace and togetherness and pacifism to a sign of not having courage, not having any strength, not being a man. It really fit very well into the normal gender roles of the time. And that's why it was so effective, because men wanted to feel like a man. And if a woman said to you, hey, you're acting like a girl, the last thing you want to do is act like a girl. You want to prove to them like, no, I'm a man. And so maybe they would just be like, I'll enlist in the military then. Fine, I'm a man. I can do it. But I think that's kind of like where that came from. I think that it started out, the feather meant peace, and it kind of still meant peace, but it was kind of twisted and used in like a negative light. But I do actually want to briefly address the Yankee Doodle feather thing, because I actually thought the Yankee Doodle feather thing was war-related.
Mm-hmm. I assumed so.
It turns out it's not war-related. In fact, it's another instance of a feather being used to make someone feel less than or to make fun of someone, but it wasn't actually about the war. And so the line, it says this: stuck a feather in his hat, called it macaroni. I know what macaroni is. Like in my mind as a kid, like everyone does. It's like pasta, right?
Yes.
It's like you get it in the box, it's cheap or whatever, right? Macaroni. That's common, right? Macaroni in the time frame that we're speaking out, which is the 18th century, is actually it refers to like a specific like subset of rich young people, and these young people were kind of known for like it wouldn't be the same, but like their jet setting, right? Like they would travel all around to all the big cities in Europe, and they'd go to France, and they would go to Spain, and they'd go to Italy, and they'd go to Italy and they'd experience all this amazing food, right? Like all this crazy pasta, which macaroni. They would go to France and they would experience all this beautiful fashion, and they'd have these like beautiful like materials they've seen, and so they would dress in a certain way and in certain colors, and they'd have all these ideas, right, where they pick up like, this is what Europe's doing, and now I'm doing all of the coolest things because I'm this wealthy, able to travel. They called those people macaroni, right? That was like their style.
Yes. The person that says like, guys, Europe changed me.
That's right. These are the people who like,
in Spain, they eat dinner at 9:00 and they stay up till midnight.
And it's just like the most healthy thing, and I'm just going to do that now. Yeah. Like that's what these are the macaroni.
I found myself in Paris.
I think it's kind of like if we compare like the Ohio bumpkin folk that we might be,
yes,
or maybe me, to like the Portland, Seattle, LA folk. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's just different, right?
Yes.
And so they came up with a name for them. They called them the Macaroni. And Yankee Doodle, right? This song, it turns out the whole song was basically written as kind of like an insult at the American youth, right? Yankee Doodle in itself, like Yankee, American.
Yes.
Doodle, Yankee Doodle basically just means like dumb country bumpkin. That's basically what it means, right? Okay, like guy who's just a old country boy, right? And so like, the joke is like a Yankee Doodle, like an American crazy youth kid. That they'll put a feather in their hat because they think that they saw that was cool, and they'll think they're macaroni all of a sudden. They'll think they're real cool because they got a feather in their hat.
Wait, so it was a song making fun of Americans?
It was a song making fun of Americans.
I don't know why I thought it was making fun of the British.
No,
Okay.
it's making fun of the American people, right? And because they think like, oh, and the thing is like fashion and news and like all that stuff, like they didn't have Snapchat or Twitter to like find out fads. So
Right.
it took the Americans a lot longer to figure out what's going on in Europe. And so stuff would slowly come over. So they might have saw like, ooh, I saw a picture of a person, who looked kind of fancy with a feather.
Yes.
I bet that's the thing, right? And so
Right.
that's like, they're kind of making a joke like they'll wear a feather because they think it's cool, but they don't even know.
That was 10 years ago.
No one over there even knows that that's like, we haven't worn feathers in a while. You know what I mean?
Fascinating. Okay.
And so like they'll be like, yeah, all he probably even knows is the term macaroni. He doesn't even know what a macaroni is, right?
Right.
And so this feather has this like long drawn out history, and in Yankee Doodle it's one thing, in the war it's another thing, and we could go even deeper into it. There's more. The White Feather Brigade even went into World War II, like it came back later, so it's not a thing that just ended. It's a thing that's for real. But what I realized through all this research is that people are always trying to better one another. They're trying to be better than one another. They're trying to put down the people who aren't them and put themselves up. They're always looking for ways to lift themselves and put down the rest. We're always looking for ways to put people into categories, no matter what that makes the other person feel like, no matter whether they like that or not. But what I also learned is it's what we do about it and what we decide to do about it and how we react to it that is what makes it. That's the important part of it, right? Like, will we be like the White Feather Brigade, and we'll even go into World War II? We'll continue to do it. We'll use all this thing. We'll do everything we can to make men feel less than they are. And I'm not saying this in like a sexist way. Like we'll do whatever we can to put down people, or will we be like the American youth who had this song Yankee Doodle made all about them, that being like, hey, you guys are stupid. And now something that's crazy about Yankee Doodle is it's the state song of Connecticut, because people took that song and thought, wow, the British people don't really think that highly of us. But what they hate about us is that we can be ourselves even if we don't know what's cool. And so they kind of took on this like American pride of like who we are is like, yeah, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe we're kind of country bumpkins. Maybe we're Yankee Doodles here. Maybe we can be happy with the feather. But like our identity is that we just like that about ourselves. We can be happy with whatever we are. So how we respond to it, I think, is what matters. So Lila, I hope that answers your question as to why they would give a man who didn't enlist in the military a feather. But I also hope it inspires you to be exactly who you are, even when people make that difference.
I think I've talked enough about my vacation and relaxation preferences just on previous episodes, so I'll try to keep it pretty short here. Like, to summarize, I sit at a desk indoors all day, and I just want to go outside in nature and relax whenever I'm not working, and especially on a vacation. Like, I want to explore, do a lot of physical activity, walking and hiking, and I'm okay with going to a city, but I want to get to the middle of nowhere. And I feel bad because I talk about all the ways I like to relax, and I've never asked you, Chris, what's your ideal vacation?
Sure. I like to relax as well. I work in an office most of the time, but I also get the chance to like go out and, I get to be out and drive places and go visit people and stuff like that. So I'm not just stuck in an office all the time. But I would say we're going to go to the beach for a vacation here soon. That's like, I would say one of my kind of ideal places is where I can just, again, kind of be outside. It's nice. If I want to swim, I can swim. If I want to lay down, I can lay down. I want to read a book, I can read a book. Basically, if there's any way I can escape responsibilities, like legitimately, for a day or two or three, it's like just that. It's like a weight off your mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like your shoulders feel a little freer.
Absolutely. No, I totally get that. Kind of adjacent to like a beach vacation. Have you ever done a cruise before?
I never have. I would love to try it.
Yeah, same here. Like, I've never done it. It goes against a lot of the things that I like because, you're trapped in the one spot, tons of people around.
Right.
You can't really explore the nature for most of the time. You're like you can look at the water, but like, you're only going to dock in certain places.
Yeah, they might let you off for like 10 hours here or whatever.
Right, exactly. And is that even long enough to do the things you want? I don't know. Like, I haven't done a cruise yet. I've had multiple people try to convince me like, hey, this is really cool. You should like this. I don't know. But the problem here is that we got a question about cruise ships, and neither of us have been on cruises
Okay.
before.
Okay.
So I had to do a lot of digging, but I think I have gotten to a satisfying conclusion.
Okay.
This question comes in from Kenton, and he asks, "What is the smallest crime I can commit on a cruise ship to be considered a pirate?" Yeah, there's a lot here. I was thinking about this in the shower the other day. I'm like, well, what's like the initial idea here? And I was thinking, you bring an inflatable raft in your luggage, you bring a drone in your luggage, and then once you're aboard the cruise ship, you blow up the raft, you throw it overboard, and then you get your drone set up. You like attach a fork from like the buffet to it, something that's cruise ship property, and then you fly the drone, you pilot it onto onto the raft, and congrats, you just plundered your first ship. But there's no way that's gonna happen. Yeah, not a great first thought, because chances are you are not even gonna get close. Like, someone is going to catch you. Like, you're going to go through a metal detector before you get on the ship probably, and then someone's going to see you have a drone. And I
Right.
looked through like a lot of like the policies from a lot of the like popular cruise lines, and like they all explicitly are like, no drones allowed, no like water inflatable things like that allowed at all. So like,
So your idea is not going to be easy to pull off.
no, that is not going to pull off. And so like there's a bit of a spectrum here, which is what I think makes this question really fun to think about as a theoretical. And I will say theoretical. I do not want anyone to try
Right.
this stuff.
And if you do, please don't tell them where you got the idea.
Yes, exactly. Or we'll be pirates too.
Yeah.
But on one end of the spectrum, you have like a crime that is too small that you're not even going to catch the attention of someone who's going to label you a pirate. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have a crime so severe that you're going to be a pirate, but you're also never going to see the free world again. So I tried to read a little bit more into the law and understand like what is the legal definition of piracy, and the ramifications that come with that. So Title 18, Chapter 81 of the United States Code explains laws against piracy. And the United States Code, from my understanding, is basically like a big list of federal laws and crimes. And so in Title 18, Chapter 81, it starts off with this little preamble that, like in normal people terms, says that like these laws are really outdated and we should probably get to updating them at some point. Which is funny that like in our official documents, they're like, we'll get to this at some point.
Yeah.
We don't think this is important enough, but here are the laws. So citizens as pirates, aliens as pirates, robbery ashore, and assault on commander as piracy all carry a punishment of life in prison.
Ooh.
So ruling those out right now. And then the next step down would be no more than 10 years in prison, which you'll get for arming or serving on privateers, conversion or surrender of a vessel, or receipt of pirate property. And
so like taking a delivery from another pirate?
I think so.
Okay.
Like they say, like, here is my booty, and then
you
you're
say,
like,
give
yes,
it over. I'll take it for you. Or I'll
yes,
buy
exactly,
it. Or
all the doubloons.
Okay.
Yes,
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
10 years or under.
yes, exactly. And then like a lot of these have to do with physical force. Not all of them, but for the most part, like I think that we have to not use our we got to use our brains. We're not going to use our bronze to solve this pirate problem. So that's why we're going to try to get charged with corruption of seamen and confederating with pirates. So the goal here is you're on this cruise ship and you find a crew member. I'm going to say they're probably in some sort of common area. Like, crew members have to eat at some point.
Yeah,
So
there's a lounge or something.
exactly. So you need to go up to this guy and say, hey, I'm a secret pirate. You need to join my secret pirate club, and we're going to overthrow this ship. And you are the best person to do this. And then you're going to walk back to your little cabin and you're just going to go to sleep. And then
And never deal with it.
and he is going to try to get, he's going to get charged with one of these crimes, and that he will be serving a larger sentence, and he's probably going to try and take some sort of plea bargain, and he's going to rat you out.
Sure.
And you're just going to get charged with corruption of seamen and confederating with pirates, and you're looking at a pretty cool 3 years or less in prison. So
you're telling me if you convince the employee, maybe captain, maybe just vice captain,
yeah, admiral,
to like turn on to treason, basically, to turn on your own ship,
yeah,
you're only going to get 3 years or under.
allegedly. I mean,
That does. I mean, they should address the rules because that seems, that seems a little bit unbalanced.
yes.
But it also seems like maybe that is the easiest thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like if the goal is, be labeled as the pirate by the US government, but also like not completely like you're gonna ruin your life a little bit, but like
Right.
not too much. Like that seems like a pretty good way to start. But now if only it were that easy.
Okay.
So that only works because like with the American law. Do you know anything about international law and
I
international
was
waters?
wondering what the difference is when you're on a boat.
Yes. Yeah. So, like, if you are 25 miles or farther away from the shore of America, then, and for the most part, any country, but like for America in this instance, if you're 25 miles or farther out, then you are now in the country of the flag that your ship is flying. So it's like you're on a little island of
So
whatever.
you can choose to fly whatever flag?
Yes, and most cruise ships have what are called flags of convenience because it might be easier to fly the flag of the Bahamas because the labor laws aren't as strict and you can pay everybody who works on your ship worse
Wow.
and have like less regulations and run your business better, I suppose, by having this, having a cruise line that's like based out of Europe, but they're part of the Bahamas because their ships are all, flying that flag.
Do you generally, and maybe you probably know the answer to this, do you generally cruise 25 miles away from the shoreline?
I think it depends on what kind of cruise you're going on. So, like, if you're going from like a Florida to the Caribbean, like there are certain islands there where it's a very small amount of time when you're not 25 miles from.
Mhm.
Because like once you get 25 miles from a different country,
That's where
then
you're at.
yeah. So it's a bigger deal when you're kind of like way out deep in the ocean. But I think there are like it is not unreasonable to say that you would be in
Okay.
international waters at
Okay.
some point. So, like when you are like if you can try this strategy that we mentioned before, but only when you're within that 25 miles. But outside of that, we need to have a backup plan because like it's, depending, you might not be able to track someone down quick enough. So I've got you covered there as well. And I read pretty deep into Bahamian law as much as I could about the
Okay.
Bahamas. And it's funny that a lot of these ships like fly the flag of Bahamas because at one point, a few hundred years ago, the area that's now the Bahamas was known as the Republic of Pirates, and that's where they would all hang out. um, but basically, like I was on the Bahamas government websites and I'm looking through and I'm trying to like read all their laws, and I'm getting so many broken links. It's like these guys don't even care.
Yeah, like not even enough to keep up a proper unbroken link.
Right. It's like they'll say, yeah, we don't support this. But like I'm starting to wonder if it's just like, they're pretending like they care and maybe
Right.
they actually don't, which now starts swinging to the other side of the spectrum of they don't care enough to get you
Right,
caught.
like I have to do something worse here.
Yes. So we're going to turn to software piracy. I was able to read about that. And yes, so in Part 17 of the Customs Management Bill of Bahamas, it outlines piracy in relation to intellectual property rights. So if you fail to persuade the crew to become pirates in U.S. jurisdiction, you need to illegally bootleg Blu-rays on this cruise ship.
While you're near the Bahamas.
Yes, exactly. And so we need to be a little bit less subtle about this to make sure it works. So that's why we're like you're going to start in your cabin. You need to make sure that you bring a bunch of like blank, we'll say like blank Blu-ray discs and like a burner or something, because like I want you to, you want to download, like illegally download the movies while you are on the ship and you're using the cruise ship's internet. So
Sure.
you're like, so you are, doing a thing in the Bahamas.
Sure.
And let's say it's Pirates of the Caribbean. Let's just be really on the nose about it.
Right.
And then you're burning those to like Blu-rays, and then you got your briefcase, and you're just walking around, and you're trying to sell those to people on the ship.
Fresh burnt Pirates of the Caribbean Blu-ray.
Exactly. Yes. And eventually, you should get enough of the attention of some sort of security person. And the hope then is that you will get docked at some point in the Bahamas. You're going to get escorted off. It's hard to tell. You're probably looking at like a slap on the wrist by their government, but you're now just at the mercy of the U.S. Of the film industry, and that it's a bit of a risk. If it's your first time, you don't have a criminal record, I'm gonna say like maybe you have a good lawyer, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's like some hefty fines, but
Right.
like you are a pirate in the area known as the Republic of Pirates at one point.
Because I think realistically they're going to take your Blu-rays away and say, stop doing that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's the challenge. It's like this is why it's such a hard question to answer.
Right, because if you tell that story to someone, they're going to say, you're not a pirate.
Yes, and that's when you say, "Yarg, yes I am." Yeah, so to answer your question, Kenton, I would say work on your persuasion skills. See if you can persuade some cruise ship members, and if not, I guess, uh, you know, buy a Blu-ray player. Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. With this being a listener episode, I wanted to let everyone know that we have already accomplished our goal. We have Tim. Tim is a listener just like you, but he has never met either of us. He also let us know that he's probably our number 11 fan, which is a bit weird, a bit odd, but I suppose that's just the pot calling the kettle black. We are weird and we love weirdness here.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So we salute you, Tim, and together, Chris and I will be your number 11 fan, Tim.
As always, you guys can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, except Google Podcasts because it is now defunct.
Rip.
You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts or on our website, factoidpodcast.com.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.